Hi everybody, Dave Wallace. When you're trying to retain a customer and you're having, perhaps it's that renewal conversation to extend an agreement, the first thing you have to do is you have to document results. If you missed the video that I put out last week, there's a link in the comments and you can go check it out. Now, once you've done that, now you have to start working with your customer, and now you're in retention mode, so you're going to be reinforcing the status quo. And that's because status quo bias is still alive and well, and you have to deal with it. The difference is that when you're the incumbent, you are the status quo. And so the conversation you're going to have is a conversation about reinforcing the status quo. Now, there are 4 things that you need to deal with when you're reinforcing the status quo. 4 forces that contribute to status quo bias. And the first one is called preference stability. And preference stability is that it's that sense that once someone has made an investment in something and they made a decision to go in some direction, that they don't want to be faced with having to second guess that decision. So they're going to stick with it even if it may not be in their best interest. Now that works well for you if you're the status quo, of course, and that's what you want to try to reinforce. The second one is an interesting one because it's anticipated blame and regret. Now, as you might remember from Daniel Kahneman, we as human beings are much more prone to avoid a loss than we are to seek a gain. We are risk averse by nature. And there is a strong sensation in the human character that we're able to experience psychologically the pain of a bad decision, even if that bad decision is not going to manifest itself for several months. We can still feel that blame and that regret in the current time. And that's an aspect of status quo bias that you have to deal with. The third one is an easy one. It's the one that most people think about, which is the cost of change. And we as humans, and even smart business people, we have this sense that the only thing that costs money is change, that the status quo is essentially free. And you've probably run into that with your conversations with customers, and it's referred to a lot as sunk costs. Well, there is a cost to staying the same, and there is a cost to change, and you have to know, depending on where you are in your conversation, how you're going to leverage that conversation. And finally, the fourth aspect of status quo bias that you have to deal with is called selection difficulty. And that's that idea, that's that idea that if we as humans are overwhelmed with too many choices, we tend to get stuck and not make a decision. Now, there's a great study out there. It's called the JAM study. You can Google it and check it out, and it's a perfect example of selection difficulty. In this conversation, the first thing to focus on is this idea of preference stability. And remember, you want to reinforce the status quo because you are the incumbent and you're trying to just continue things along the path that you've been on. So what you're going to do is you're going to review your customer's prior decision process. You're going to talk to them, remind them about the process they went through, the evaluation criteria that they used, the people that were involved in the evaluation, who made the final decision, what the final decision criteria was, and who and why they actually picked you. Now, here's something else that you have to keep track of, is there's a good chance, because of the current economic situation that we're in with all the uncertainty, that the customer contact you have right now may not have been involved in the decision to pick you. Heck, you might not have been involved from your company's perspective. So taking your customer down this journey, not only documenting the results, but helping them walk through this idea of why they picked you, is going to be really important when you want to reinforce the status quo. Now, the next step along the way is going to be to talk about risk aversion, and that's where you're going to look at blame and regret and cost of change, and that'll be in the next video. In the meantime, there's an email that's going to follow this video if you'd like to reach out immediately. And as always, thanks for your time.